Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Sustainability Network. I am Shruti Harihara Subramanian, and I am the founder of golisodastore.com. Today, we have two extraordinary women who would be joining us today. They are the founders of Eco Femme, Jessamijn and Kathy. For me personally, Eco Femme is a brand that has changed my life. Eco Femme works in the space of sustainable menstruation, and their cloth pads have changed the way women use cloth pads. So today, and for us as well, for Goli Soda as well, Eco Femme has been one of our longest partners that we've been associated with, and probably our best-selling brand as well. So let's meet Jessamijn. I'm very excited to meet them after a long time. So meanwhile, to our listeners, if you have any questions regarding sustainable menstruation, the cloth pads, feel free to pass on the chat your questions to Kathy and Jessamijn, and they'll be happy to answer. Hi guys, how are you?
Hey, we're good. Very good. Nice to see you.
Yes, it's been quite some time since we've met, and this time it's virtual.
Yeah, super. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, I'm very, it's my pleasure because it's been a while since we met, and I thought this would be a great platform for us to meet and catch up on what's happening and what's the latest from Eco Femme. How have things been at Auroville?
Yeah, we've been, like everybody, sheltering in place. I think we've been fortunate to have a beautiful green environment around, so it was possible to at least go out and enjoy some of the forest. And in the last weeks, we've been back in business. And yeah, the last couple of days, really busy preparing some more orders to send before Chennai locks down again and we can't send again. So yeah, we were busy packing the last days.
And for our viewers, thanks to them and their prompt delivery, we are also well stocked with Eco Femme at our store. So even during the lockdown, we are quite prepared to deliver Eco Femme to our Chennai customers through Swiggy, Dunzo, Link, callers, messages. We'll make sure you get your Eco Femme at home even during these 2 weeks during the lockdown. And I would also say that these 2 weeks, if any of you are thinking to shift to the cloth pad, these 2 weeks might be the good time for you to do that. Don't you think so? Because most of them are going to be at home, and it might be a good time to try out the cloth pad. Don't you think so?
Yes, this is generally what we, when people are new to cloth pads, we always sort of say, just try it at home, because that's really, it's where you can check and feel most comfortable. So it's for sure a good time to try.
Okay. So let's start straight about, for those of them who are new to the whole concept of cloth pad and Eco Femme, let's start with the journey. How did the idea for the two of you begin? Because I think you were the pioneers in India when it came to cloth pad, as in the kind that we see. I think using cloth as for during menstruation was something we all, or not we, but a generation before, been using cloth during menstruation. But you guys changed the way cloth is used during menstruation. So could you just tell us about the journey of how it all began?
Sure. Okay. So, I suppose in a way it started when I kind of came to India myself 23 years ago, and one of the first discoveries I made, and I think many foreigners are confronted with when you come to India, is the problem of waste disposal. And, pretty early on realizing that I would have to dig holes to bury my sanitary waste, and obviously finding that quite difficult. So I was sort of on the lookout for alternatives and found a cloth pad when I was visiting my twin brother in New Zealand about a year later, and just instinctively, bought it because I could see, even it was unbranded, it was obviously homemade, but I understood that this was kind of what I was looking for without really having a name for it even. And so that kind of got me started on my own cloth pad journey. And In terms of Eco Femme today, I mean, I was just playing around with designs and offering them to women in Auroville for a long time. And then in 2010, which was when Jessamijn had joined Auroville and we met, and we were looking for some income generating activities for the women who were self-help group members of Auroville Village Action Group, a local NGO. And, you know, we kind of just joined the dots and thought, I mean, Jessamijn might say a bit about her own discovery of cloth pads, but we both love cloth pads. This was just sort of one thing we found that we shared from the beginning. And we realised it was not a very complicated product. I mean, we were such a low-tech product, so we assumed that it could be possible to train these women how to stitch. And so we just sort of thought, well, you know, if these products are picking up, certainly I'd seen through that sort of earlier 10-year experience that women in Auroville at least were interested in them, that we thought if we try to market them and try to sort of promote the concept that it must be possible to, you know, develop a little bit of a market and sell some pads. So this was really the very early idea to just local livelihood for the rural women. Tried to kind of build the cloth pad design and develop it a little bit, and you know, and see where it went. So this was
I'm a bit more into the picture.
So this was the original sort of where it started. I don't know. Do you want to go on and say how it sort of evolved and how your own maybe experience?
Yeah, I think this part of the environmental benefits of cloth pads was something that was really sort of like a given for us. It had to be a product that had an environmental benefit. And in a way, it wasn't so much of a very long discussion or difficult choice. It was just, yes, oh yes, that sounds, it clicked immediately. And for me, that was maybe because when I was small, I grew up in Indonesia. My mother, she stitched cloth pads with young girls from old towels, and later I also made them for myself when I was going to places where I knew I wouldn't be able to have access to any sort of other products. So it felt like a very logical choice. Yeah, to say where it went from there is, I think, like Kathy said initially, we thought, okay, we'll help the women to get started. They'll start their own sort of business and take off from there. And I think very soon we actually found out a few things. We were very interested in what is it that women also here are using and how are they experiencing menstruation, and because we knew there was a taboo, but what does that actually look like? And so we did many interviews and focus group discussions, and found out that despite the taboo, women were very sort of keen in a safe space to talk about menstruation. And I think that was really, that gave us a lot of energy. Like, it was also the sort of, you know, the felt sort of need to talk about it and to get access to that information. I think that was really an eye-opener for us. And the other part that was also an important piece was that women were interested in cloth pads. We were doing like product analysis, showing them all the sort of different products that are out there and discussing them. Okay, like for example, cloth pads, then disposable sanitary napkins, cups, and tampons. And so looking at how they're made, who makes them, how you use them, how you care for them, what they mean for your body, for in terms of health, for the environment, cost. And we were really surprised that the women were very interested in cloth pads. We somehow thought that the market is and the market is. We thought the market was pushing so much for disposable sanitary napkins that we thought the women would not be so interested. But looking at all these different factors, there was an interest, and I think these two things led us to think, okay, the project can actually be a much sort of richer project where we can include menstrual education and access to cloth pads to girls and women who otherwise could not afford these. And yeah, and with that also came, in a way, the women with whom we were working then were not necessarily looking for developing a sort of a social enterprise for themselves, or an enterprise for themselves, and were looking for a job. And so I think this sort of combination of factors led us to form Eco Femme of what it is now with like a hybrid organization that does, on the one hand, production with local women in our area, commercial sales in India and internationally, and menstrual education and pad distribution to girls and women from low-income backgrounds. And that's in India.
I'll be coming to that soon. I'd like the audience to know a bit more on the Pad to Pad and Pad to Sister program. But I'm quite surprised that you said that the women were quite open, and this was around 10 years ago, right? Or more.
Yes.
But it was also around 10 to 9 years ago when we started selling them at Goli Soda in Chennai. I felt that maybe it's a rural-urban divide, because many of the urban ladies needed a far more education or push about the concept of a cloth pad, because the first time when you say cloth pad, at least now things are very different. People don't raise their eyebrows here. If we go to a fair or market and display the pads, people are not looking surprised at what we are showing them. People are a lot more aware, a lot more educated. But I felt in the initial years they required a lot more push towards that, at least in the urban area. Did you also feel that kind of disparity between the rural and the urban when it came to accepting the cloth pad?
I think what we learned really early on, Shruti, was that the conversation was really critical. And so in urban areas, typically like retailers like yourself would have the product available, but wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to, interact and, and do something like a product analysis like we were doing with rural women. So, perhaps the questions were there, but they weren't easy to answer. And I think too that modern, sort of urban women had been almost brainwashed at that stage, that this idea of a sanitary napkin is what a modern hygienic woman should use. And there was no question of going back to cloth. This was seen as a primitive or backwards. Whereas with rural women, I think that there was more familiarity with cloth in their sort of living memory. And also because we could do these kind of processes like product analysis, where we could show they could handle the product, they could ask the questions, they could make sense of these different factors like understanding what was in a disposable pad. It really gave them the chance to make an informed choice. So I think that, and this is true to this day, I think being able to have a conversation is really important. It really helps people feel confident to make the switch to a cloth pad. And we always engaged with sort of rural and low-income women and girls in that way. It was always in a context of education and conversation. So, they would sort of viscerally, like they liked the product, they'd get it in their hands, and the first thing they'd say is, oh, it's beautiful, And I think even that was kind of like a click, that a sanitary product didn't have to be, like white and
that's exactly how I felt, because when so one of my friends had said she's using the Eco Femme, and I was still contemplating at that point whether to shift or not. This was over 10 years ago. But when I started composting, that's when you realize that there is a certain amount of waste that you don't know what to do, and that's your sanitary pad waste. So that's when I decided, okay, if she is using Eco Femme, I can too. So I had first ordered it online, and in my head, I still expected a sort of a rag cloth or something like that to reach me. But the minute I saw the colors and how beautifully it was designed, I have not gone back to disposable after that. I think the comfort of the cloth pad is unparalleled, because especially a generation like mine, completely growing up in an urban setting, seeing all these ads by these big companies, and from our first period, we've been using disposable. That's the anybody in our team. Only after we tested, we sell it. So this was the first thing I said, we must have a product like this in our store. So let's come to education. I think a lot of what Eco Femme does is in the space of education. I think selling the pads is probably the byproduct of that, but education plays a big role in that. So you do have various programs for that, right? So and you also have things like the pad for pad, the pad for sisters. So could you elaborate about that?
Sure, and I think, you know, we could do it in a couple of ways. Like, I could speak about the non-profit programs which are reaching out to low-income women and girls, and maybe Jessamijn, who heads the sort of commercial team, could speak also about how education functions with more urban and educated women and men, actually, anybody. So on the non-profit side, which is the team that I'm looking after, we have two programs. So Pad for Pad is where we actually are able to provide pads which are donated through sales to our international customers. So we include, it's a buy one, give one scheme. When an international customer buys a pad, they actually sponsor a pad for a girl in India. And we club those donations, and they go alongside with an educational program. It's a standardized 3-hour-long menstrual health program, and it covers everything from, you know, just understanding the process of menstruation, the biology, the looking at cycle tracking, looking at things like nutrition, exercise, hygiene, of course, culture. We talk a little bit about kind of culture and practices, and we do this kind of product analysis with the girls too, so they really get a chance to make an informed choice. We never force the pads on the girls, but they have the option. If after the session they feel they'd like to give it a go, they can take a kit of 4 cloth pads and a pouch. So we do this program together with partners all over India as well as locally. So, for example, last year we reached just over 13,000 girls as through this program. So, yeah, the impact is really gaining momentum as a result of, obviously, our growing international sales. So that's really cool. Yeah. And then Pads for Sisters is a slightly different approach, but education, again, is central to it. What we do there is, again, working largely through NGO partners who have access to women primarily in self-help groups. And they, again, each situation is a bit different, so it's quite customized depending on how they reach out. But we guide them in how to conduct this educational program, which especially this product analysis piece, because we find that's really, really important, that you know, that first of all, women know there are options, that it's not just you either have to, you know, use the old cloth is what they're, the way they refer to it, or the modern sanitary napkin. They're sort of like, they're presented with this binary choice, and like we really feel it's important that they know that there are many options, and each has advantages and disadvantages. So we put a lot of emphasis on product analysis and on training partners how to do product analysis. And we also, you know, take time to talk about things like cycle tracking and also culture as well, because these women are often, you know, adopt practices like, for example, you know, not touching certain things while they're menstruating because of the belief in you know, purity and defilement. And these are often inherited ideas that they're not even sure where they come from. So we, you know, give the women time to talk about these practices and share among themselves and really reflect on whether these practices are serving them or whether they feel them as restrictive. And, you know, we're not necessarily trying to change or break the culture in this way, but at least giving them a chance for critical thinking about these adopted behaviours. So that's some of the sort of ways in which we approach education among, say, rural women and girls.
Okay, that's lovely.
Yeah.
So, Jessamijn, would you like to talk about?
Yeah, so for, in the commercial sense, our largest way to connect with people is actually social media, and to share about sort of the wide scope of our work, so not just sort of purely on the product, but also how through the product you actually connect to other women or other girls that you're supporting through that. Maybe also something to add on to what Kathy was mentioning, how Pad for Pad is supported by international sales. In a way, Pads for Sisters, the pads are provided at a subsidized rate. And so it's actually also all the surplus that we are making through our also domestic sales that are supporting the access to education, as well as subsidized pads for women from low-income background.
Okay.
No,
sorry, you continue. I'll come to my.
Okay, so I find it important that we somehow are able to share this sort of rich story with customers, because they're really the enablers of this work. And in a way, I think that for us as an organization, it's been our own sort of empowerment journey, so to say, is that through that we are able to execute these programs without any sort of a real additional funding from outside. And it's very fundamental in our organization for all our team members that we have both parts of this work.
Okay. Now, I think, as I told the audience in the beginning, I think Eco Femme has sort of revolutionized the concept of sustainable menstruation. I think the earlier women used to feel shy about talking about menstruation or talk about it at home, and a lot of it has been broken over the last few years, and I think a lot of credit has to go to the kind of work you are doing. So the other question, when you're talking about education, how much of men or the families are involved in these discussions?
Yeah, I think at the rural level, at the moment, not as much. And there's kind of a couple of reasons for that. Like, especially when it comes to adolescent girls, we primarily reach girls who are in government schools. They're from some of the most sort of impoverished families. And there's also just, I think, still a lot of sort of shyness and awkwardness. Like, most of them have not ever had a conversation with their mothers about menstruation. So we're really often having the first ones to be having this kind of conversation. And I think what we've realized is it's really important that they have a safe space where they feel that they are actually able to safely ask their questions and not be embarrassed or, you know, be over inhibited through shyness. And having boys in that first conversation is really inhibiting. So I think there's definitely a need for boys and men to be included in the education process. But when, especially with young girls, I think the very first sort of conversations of this nature, it's helpful to actually have them in a girl-only space.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Continue. Yeah.
No, that was it. I think I was just sharing.
Audio.
Oh, okay. Is it back? Hello? Hello?
Can I?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
No. Can we disconnect and connect again? I can't.
Sure.
I've lost you, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
that's a pity. We
how
hear
do we
you.
do this?
Okay.
Sorry about that. Audio. Hopefully, they'll send us a request soon, and we can continue the conversation. As I reminded all of you, please continue to send us questions, anything related to using a cloth pad or the practicalities of it, and we'll be happy to answer that. They will be coming back. Hello, can you hear?
Yes,
we
can hear you.
Oh,
you cannot hear.
It's not too clear again. So
okay,
the audience can hear you. So please continue.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I think you had a question, perhaps, Shruti, you were going to ask about, because I was explaining about why we actually start with girls alone without boys.
Yes.
Did you want to build on that?
No, so I just wanted to know how much of the men are included, and talking about if the girls are feeling shy about having men around or to talk about something like this, then how do you address the fact that if they have to wash their pads or dry them, so how do they deal with such a situation at home?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. And, you know, it's not always necessarily easy. I think another part of what we really emphasize in the education is also to give girls practice opportunities to start talking actually out loud about, you know, menstruation and naming, you know, their body parts, and being able to do peer-to-peer conversations with each other to really get over this shyness. Because it's one thing, I think, to talk at students and lecture, but it's another when they can actually feel that they've got the skills, the confidence and the knowledge to start speaking for themselves. So we try to give as much chance for that in the classroom as possible. And, you know, and that's something that it's not that 1 or 2 sessions can necessarily crack that, but, you know, that it's definitely an opening. And we, you know, practice, for example, how they can talk to their mothers or other people in the family to explain. But you're right, it is a negotiation, you know, about how to, because you have to obviously wash, and we, you know, recommend sun drying, which means drying them out in places where people can see. And, you know, this is not always possible in the end of the day. We see with women, it's easier, you know, it's much, I guess just from experience, that once they've, you know, gotten used to what it's like to menstruate and they're, you know, married and whatever, there's a much less inhibition. So I think it's going to just take a while, and that's a big culture shift before, you know, it becomes a really normal and natural conversation to be having at home, and where, you know, women will feel comfortable to proudly hang their cloth pads in the sun. That's a day we're dreaming of still. But again, I think, you know, you're speaking to something really important, which is a sort of holistic and systemic nature of this. It's like, if this change is going to happen, we all have to get more comfortable, you know, of having these conversations. So I think really the skill of navigating this conversation is actually a really important part of the education process.
So let's come to the pad. Let's talk about the pad. So we all know, I have a panty liner with me. So for those of you who think Eco Femme is just about the cloth, it's just not that. There is a lot more design involved in it. And that's the very reason why I have not used anything else. So talk to us about the design of the pad, and why is it different? Why is it more comfortable? Why is it more accident-free? How is it as good as the so-called disposable in terms of convenience?
So I also brought a pad.
Yay! So this one is probably about 10 years old. So that's another advantage. It lasts for that long.
Okay, wow. All right. So this is a day pad, and as you can see, it's got wings, which you fasten around your underwear. And so it sits like this in your underwear. And the pad is made of soft organic cotton. It's flannel, like brushed flannel, so it's soft, and that also makes it absorbent, and inside there are more absorbent layers. And then the back is cotton with a leak-proof layer, so the blood doesn't go through the pad.
And this sort of, you may not see it, but it's a very thin laminate. Yeah.
And so this has the advantage that you cannot sort of leak through your cloth, which for many women is a big concern with using cloth. And because they are in so many different sizes, you showed a panty liner, I showed a day pad. There are also larger sizes up to like a night pad. So you can choose also which size fits your... Sorry, I was too enthusiastic about my pad. And
so you also have the pure organic line, right? The white ones?
Yes, so they're all organic.
Certified organic.
They're both certified organic, but this one is made with the cotton has not been dyed in a color. And so this is unbleached cotton, and with a different sort of pattern at the back side. Yeah. So they also come in all the different sort of sizes, from small panty liners to the larger night pad. So you can use them for at least 75 times. I mean, you showed yours that's 10 years old, but the leak-proof layer is guaranteed for at least 75. And so you can wash and reuse them. And what I always like to think is that this one cloth pad is the same as the 75 that you otherwise would throw away. So this gives you a very sort of tangible idea of how much waste you are reducing.
Tell us, viewers, about a basic maintenance of the pad. There's always this mindset that cloth, thanks to the terrible ads that we've been seeing growing up,
Yes.
they keep saying it's not hygienic and stuff like that. We've had several panel discussions with doctors and who have told us, and you were both there in many of those panels, where they've told us that cloth is probably more hygienic than and would not give you the rashes and other problems that disposables give you. And especially in a city like Chennai, where it's so hot and sweaty, the disposable can give you so many other health issues and skin allergies and things like that, which the cloth doesn't. So they have guaranteed that the cloth is definitely more hygienic. But how do we ensure that it's hygienic? How do we maintain the pad?
Because I think that's very important to say that any of those products, depending on the use of it, is what makes them hygienic or not. And so the cloth pad, if you suppose, I'm just showing it, suppose you have used it already and you could fold it up. This is another question people are asking, like, how do I do when I'm going to work? And so you could, the soiled pad, you could fold it up, take it with you, maybe in a little pouch or in your bag. And then at home, you put it in cold water because blood coagulates with hot water. So you put it in just normal cold water. You soak it for maybe 30 minutes. And then the blood is sort of more dissolved, loosened up. And then you can either just sort of hand wash it until all the blood, and you can use a little mild soap, and you wash it until all the blood and all the soap is gone. And so you rinse it. And then when you've done that, if you can, dry it in the sun. That's fantastic, because that is a sanitizer. And if not, in many places it might be difficult to dry it in the sun, or if it's during monsoon. You just make sure that it dries well in a place where you'd also normally be drying your clothes. And I think they're very sort of simple things to know whether your cloth pad is clean. It's very similar to your underwear.
Talking about drying, when I was traveling abroad, I wanted to make sure that I was still using the cloth pad, and it was not as sunny as here. So at the end of the night, I was using the hair blower, and I was drying the pad, and it worked out as well. And Kavya, who talks to us about the amazing things about the cloth pads, she had an experience where she was on a biking trip with her husband, and then she couldn't dry the pads because they had to move out. So she had clipped it on the bike, and as they were moving, they were drying the pad. So there are some amazing stories. So that shows how much we want to make sure that we continue to use the cloth pad, even if we are traveling or any other way. And I keep telling people, I'm a filmmaker, and I have friends who are workout coaches, dancers. They all use the Eco Femme cloth pad. So if audience out there, they're wondering if there might be accidents, or is it safe, or how can I travel with it, it's as convenient as the disposable. And to be honest, there have been days that I have probably washed it only a day after, because if I'm traveling or it's been a long day at shoots, I come back the next day, I wash it, and it's still fine. So that's lovely. So any of you, if you have any more questions, do share it with us. And thank you so much, Kathy and Jessamijn. It's been a wonderful chat. But before I wind up this whole conversation, there's a question I'm asking all our guests on the show. What has this lockdown taught the two of you, personally and professionally? I think each one of us have been going through many things during this long period of lockdown. What is it to you, and what is it to Eco Femme?
I feel like it's
was it a tough question?
No, I personally am very happy you asked it. I mean, it's been a really rich time, and I think probably Jessamijn will probably say something quite different. For me personally, slowing down was really profound. And I think that we've been talking so much in Eco Femme about cycle awareness, and and trying to listen to the phases of the cycle, and and realizing we're not always consistent all all the time, you know, we ebb and we flow like the moon. This is what living in a cyclical body is like. And yet I felt that I so often struggled to really apply that insight to my own life because, you know, the demands of work and life and everything were relentless. And I often found myself really overriding my body. So I think one of the things that this time really genuinely gave me, because we were all sort of in a way forced to slow down, is that it gave me the chance to really like go through a whole cycle and really observe that internally, and that the importance and necessity of slowing down and regenerating, and how, you know, after that rest comes fresh energies, and really seeing that and experiencing that. So I am personally still very excited as I'm, you know, even though I'm sort of late in my cycling years now, I still get my period, but, you know, it sort of feels like better late than never. This awareness that, you know, the body is just so intelligent, and to be able to really become sensitive to it and respond to it feels to me like a great gift, and a great gift of what this work has brought into my life. And like lockdown just really gave me a chance to get up close with that that inquiry in a way that I have always wanted to and haven't really felt I had the time before.
Yeah.
What about for you, Jessamijn?
Yeah, for me, initially I was really struggling because it meant a lot of work. I live in a small forest, and it also meant that most of that forest work of watering and mulching, and in addition to our continued Eco Femme work. And so I really needed to learn to find a sort of pattern with that. And but I think over the weeks, the things that I really started to enjoy is to you know, to take the time to make things yourself, and so to be more connected to that. So I've always wanted to make lemon pickles, and so I started to make lemon pickles, and pickling, or all sorts of different pickles. And in a way, through work also, I've seen that now that women have time, that we've had a few sort of like make your own cloth pads at home, and that's something I always really enjoy, because you know, you're sort of in a quiet space, and you're chatting with people, and you're making something that's beautiful. And so this ability to do more things with your own hands, and to do things more closer to you, rather than being sort of really dependent on things that we're buying, that's always something that
I guess we've all become a lot more sustainable during this period. That's what even I felt. And I think even in terms of Goli soda, we've realized more people are now having the time to think to be sustainable, or want to try them out, or have realized that the way they were living before was very different from now, and they need to start making that change. And I think that's wonderful. So what next with Eco Femme? Are you planning to diversify, or still stick to the cloth pads? So what can we expect next with Eco Femme?
Yeah, in terms of products, very specifically, I mean, we've been working for some time on baby products, and so that will be coming out, like inserts for nappies, also made from organic cotton.
Lovely.
And we're working on a very sort of
this had come a year before, when my baby was born. I could have used it. So
we're working on a very
still, baby products are the next thing, because diapers are contributing a lot to the landfill. So I guess it's going to make a huge difference if you get into that as well.
Yes, in terms of sanitary waste, the estimate is that from 7/8 of the sanitary waste is nappies. 1/8 would be pads. So nappies is really an enormously growing sort of polluter. Yeah. So that, and we're working on a large pad with which we hope with Goli soda we could do a special edition, and to try out and see whether women are keen on having a sort of a larger size pad. We've seen that in the past, that there are many sort of requests for that. Okay. And so that's also coming up.
it'll be called a comfy pad, which I really
the super
like.
comfy.
The super
I'm
comfy.
sure it is. I would say double comfy because the Eco Femme pads are already comfy. So you need to call it double comfy pads. So sounds great. I'm very excited to see the comfy pads, and hopefully we'll have them at our store as well very soon.
Yes.
And of course the baby products. I think I see how much, though I use washable diapers with my child, I see how much of it is being used with just the washable ones. So it's alarming to know the kind of waste that's generated with disposable ones. So thank you so much for the two of you for being on the Sustainability Network, and it was nice catching up after a long time.
Yeah.
And hope to see you all soon, and thank you so much. It was a very nice catch-up.
It was really nice to meet you again.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
So viewers, I hope chat. I had a wonderful chat, so I hope you all enjoyed the chat that I had with the founders of Eco Femme. Somebody's asking, does Eco Femme have an office in India? Very much in India. They are in Tamil Nadu. So though then Kathy and Jessamijn are from other countries, but they are based in India and their offices run out of India. So thank you so much for listening to the fourth episode of the Sustainability Network. We will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. We will be having the founders of Auroville. Auroville is an amazing toy, can't just say toy, they make products for children, starting from teethers to toys and amazing other things which are totally sustainable. So I'm excited to see them. I use some of their toys for my daughter as well. So see you all tomorrow, and thank you so much for listening to the Sustainability Network. And stay safe. Tomorrow we are starting our next 2 weeks of lockdown, and hopefully let us all pray that this would be the last of it, and Chennai gets back to some sort of normalcy very soon. But yet again, another reminder, Goli Soda will continue to deliver essentials even during this lockdown period. So please call us on our customer care number, connect us through social media, throw us an email, catch us on our website. We'll ensure that your products reach you if you are in Chennai. Otherwise, once the lockdown is done, we will continue our deliveries across India. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.